After making my video about which characters I think could return in Mass Effect 5, it made me want to go back and look at all of the concept art and teasers we've been given to see what new companions we might be getting. So let's look at all of the reveals, previous cut companions, and which races we could see as our new trusty sidekicks in the next game. And before we get into everything, I want to point out this tweet from the 2020 trailer reveal. Gamble specifically says that the animation director for Mass Effect 5 knows who the characters are. Obviously, he probably helped animate them for this trailer, but I'm assuming when this trailer came out, they had an idea of who these individuals behind Liara actually are. And Gamble implies the possibility of it being able to be figured out. So maybe even early on they had an idea of who they wanted to bring back and which new characters they wanted to introduce. As for returning characters, I made this graphic that includes all of the previous companion ages and life expectancy, and in short summary, Liara and Grunt are the only two companions from the original trilogy that would for sure live to Andromeda's timeline, thus making their returns possible in any timeline. And Rex, Arya, and Samara would be the next companions that could potentially be in any timeline as well, as we don't know the true extent of Asari and Krogan life expectancies. There are no documented cases of Krogans dying of old age, and it is presumed that they can essentially live for a very, very long time due to the nature of their biology. So any Krogans in the teasers could be from any timeline. So with that said, let's look at the 2021 Mass Effect Continues poster. The first important thing here is that we see 4 total characters, which also mirrors the 4 total characters from the 2020 teaser trailer if you include Liara. So I assume the next game will allow for 3 companions instead of 2 like previous games, which I think is a good change. Dragon Age Inquisition allowed for you to have 3 companions, and that game had some really amazing banter between your companions and really allowed your companions to establish relationships amongst themselves as well. And while this was obviously possible in previous Mass Effect games, most people usually stuck to their usual 2 favorites. So this allows more choices and hopefully adds more diversity to the gameplay as well, if you can control your companion abilities and interchange different party comps. So let's look at who these could actually be. I've brightened and sharpened the image and color sampled some of the characters to see if anything is recognizable. First off, the obvious Krogan. To me, there is no doubt this is a Krogan, and this Krogan is wearing Rex's iconic armor. And realistically, I think there are 3 options for this Krogan. It being Rex, because that looks like Rex's armor, it being Grunt, or maybe Rex's son? Maybe Rex did die, or if this is an Andromeda, maybe Rex is back on Tuchanka rebuilding the planet, and handed down his armor to Grunt because they grew close after their time with Shepard. This being Rex's son is the lesser of these possibilities, simply because we've already had a younger, teenage kid type of story with Grunt, and I don't want to see the same tropes just because they were successful in the past. So I would prefer if this is actually Rex, or Grunt in Rex's armor in the Milky Way galaxy. Next, we have the character in the front. Now, I think this is Liara. You can tell that the character has a blue head and blue arms, and we actually have now seen the full concept and 3D model of Liara's new design. And she does actually have blue arm guards. And the rest of the white torso area with black boots also matches this character's color scheme. I will say though that the walking pose did remind me more of PB and not really Liara. The way her arms are outstretched and kind of exaggerated didn't really remind me of Liara, who is more composed than PB. I may be overthinking that, and this could be a brand new Asari, but I still do think that this is Liara. And on the bottom right, we have this character that I don't have any idea who they are. But I do have a theory that this could be Vetra, or a new female Turian, mostly because of the possible head shape here. Female Turians have their skin showing behind the bony front of their face, and this color I've sampled looks very similar to Turian skin. But that's just a shot in the dark. This could very well be a brand new character, which is most likely the case anyways. Lastly, we have the character in the middle. And I've already said that I think that this is a Pathfinder helmet, and definitely isn't your standard black, red, and white N7 helmet. I do think there's a possibility that this could be Ryder. And I also know that I've said that I don't think this game is taking place in the Andromeda Galaxy, but will be in the Milky Way based on everything we've seen. So these two theories are a bit contradictory, which is inevitable at this point, because we have no confirmation of anything. But this does look like a Pathfinder helmet from above. The middle reflective blue area, in contrast to the white outline, is almost exactly in line with Ryder's Pathfinder helmet. So how will we be in the Milky Way and be Ryder? Well, I don't know. While I still think this looks like the Pathfinder helmet and could indicate that this is Ryder, I still think there's maybe a 1% chance we'll actually play as Ryder. Maybe we will see Ryder again though, and it will be a Dragon Age Inquisition type situation with Hawk. I really don't know because every new clue they provide is just a contradiction of another clue. So as of right now, everything is a possibility, but either way, I don't see the N7 helmet or trench coat from last year's N7 day. And I would assume our protagonist would be in this picture, especially if we're now getting 3 companions alongside our main character. Which brings me to the trailer from 2020. Obviously, again, we have Liara out of the 4 characters we actually see, and I've brightened and sharpened this image as well. And first I want to point out that in neither the post or in the trailer do we see the new N7 character that was revealed in December. We don't see the new N7 helmet or the trench coat. We see standard armors, which could mean that maybe that armor set is just one of many, but this armor set doesn't really look like the Pathfinder armor either. But I do suspect that this is the same character in the middle from the previous poster. I think maybe this could be our protagonist. There is also the possibility that this isn't our protagonist and maybe this is a new human companion. On the left, we have an obvious Solarian, which could also be this character on the bottom right of the poster as well. And then we have the character on the right. And a lot of people think that this is a Krogan, and I believe it is as well. Initially, I thought it was a Turian, but the feet are too flat and the hip areas protrude too much to be a Turian. But I do think this doesn't match Rex's armor's head shape. If you look at Rex's armor from a similar angle, his head is lower than the top of his armor. So maybe this just looks odd because of the angle, or he got new red armor, who knows. Just a small detail I wanted to point out. And here we have one final piece with new implied companions, and that is this concept art here. And as a reminder, concept art uses a lot of old assets to save time. It's a concept, not a game render, which explains why the Solarian and Drell have the exact same body silhouettes as Thane and Mordin from the Mass Effect 2 character select screen. Obviously, we aren't getting Thane and Mordin back, but I do think this implies we could be getting Drell and Solarian companions, which matches the trailer with the Solarian as well. As for the character on the left, I assume this could be a human protagonist from the previous trailer and poster, but the head shape is also kind of weird, as are the hand shape. So this one I'm not really sure about. We also have this interesting character in the middle, and I actually think this could be an Angara. Here are some concepts from Andromeda and Jaal's model. This could very well be a slightly altered Angara. The pose and frame is very similar. And I do actually want to say one of my major Andromeda criticisms since the Angara are returning. Something that I hope will be fixed in the next game revolves around the Angara, but something is off about their design. Maybe it's the Frostbite engine making the characters look weird. Maybe it's the weird animations. I don't know, but I much prefer the Angara concept to what we get in game. I don't think Jaal looks bad, but I think he could look better, and I think the female Angara could look a lot better. I hope that with the next game, the aliens, especially any from Andromeda, will be updated. And I think we may already be seeing evidence of this from the Turian on the poster. In the original trilogy, the Turians had similar legs to humans, which we know was due to animation limitations, but the legs in Andromeda across the alien species are very wonky. And I was honestly disappointed to see this Turian with the overextended legs from Andromeda. The Solarians and Quarians already have this exact leg shape, so I don't know why Turians are now being modeled to have these legs as well. I just find it extremely odd. If they bring back old Turians we knew from the original trilogy, and then we now see Garrus or Primarch Victus with these legs, I'll actually be so upset. They're really uncanny valley levels for me. Unfortunately, I find that a lot of the Andromeda aliens have the same visual aesthetic. I know it's been a complaint of Andromeda for a long time, so I do hope that it is taken into account since we're seeing Angara here. And I hope these Turian legs aren't the final design, since we've already seen what Turians look like with no armor in concept art, and their legs are not like this. Actual jump scare if they bring back Garrus and suddenly his legs look like this. So yeah, that's something I'm disappointed in with one of the Mass Effect 5 reveals. I do wonder if this Turian is a companion though. But I'm very curious as to why they gave him almost the exact same eye visor as Garrus. It doesn't look exactly the same, but it is extremely similar. And we all know that Garrus is one of, if not the most popular character from the franchise. So while I don't think that this is Garrus, especially because of these legs, I wonder if the visor is just becoming a way to indicate that this Turian is another companion? Though I'm not a huge fan of the visor look. I also wonder if this human is maybe a female version of the protagonist. Or maybe the presumed human protagonist will be one of the characters to the right. The woman on the far right might also be a ship doctor. She does have on the same clothing as Chakwa's wears throughout the trilogy, but Chakwa's arm patch did say SR2 on it. And this one looks like it says X05 backwards, which matches what the doctors and scientists wore in the original trilogy. This is most likely reused assets, but who knows. Anyways, this image has an Angara, who I have already said I don't think is Jal. The clothing doesn't match. So could this be a new Angara companion? And I think this Geth here has to be a companion, or at the very least a very important character. The Geth have now been shown in 3 pieces of reveals. The Mass Effect Continue posters, though they were dead, the relay audio, and now this poster. I think the Geth will play a major part in the next game, and our time with Legion was so short, especially with so much of his content being cut. So I think we will get a Geth companion in the next game, and I think a Geth or some other AI/synthetic companion should be romanceable. If they are moving the organic versus synthetic conflict forward, I think the next step in its evolution should be romancing them, which would essentially be seeing them as our equals. Joker already opened that door, and I think we should be able to continue it. Also, this Geth is dressed quite fancy. Honestly, they look like they're from kind of fantasy setting instead of a sci-fi setting, specifically with the long cloak and pauldrons. Main character energy. Next, we have this beefy-looking Solarian. But from this angle, it looks like there is only one horn instead of your typical Solarian with 2. And the one Listheni that we know of is actually only speculated to be one, because of his muscular stature. Tazik may be Listheni, or he may just be a muscular Solarian. So maybe this will be the first actual Listheni we're seeing. It definitely doesn't look like another race except Solarian. I also think that the 2 figures on the left look like new alien species, or maybe they're even synthetics. They have weird faces and head features, so who knows. And to the left we have what I originally thought was a Turian, but I wonder if this is a Ralloy. I am obsessed with the Ralloy and the possibilities of seeing them, and if you've ever seen any Ralloy concept art, it's just fan-made because we don't know what they actually look like. The face definitely reminds me of a bird, though it is similar to a Turian. The back of the head isn't shaped like a Turian though, so I'm leaning towards a Ralloy. And if it is, that would mean that this game takes place sometime after Mass Effect 3. Not only does this look like a place you'd see on Omega or Ilium, the Ralloy cut all communications after retreating to their homeworld to trick the Reapers into not harvesting them. It would be extremely interesting to see them return and finally join the Council races properly. We also know that no Ralloy were headed for Andromeda. And I know a lot of people think that this is a Turian, and while yes it could be, here are the head structures in comparison. The back of the head is shaped differently, and this character seems to be missing the little danglies from the Turian jaws. I didn't include female Turians because they don't have any protrusions from the back of their head to compare. So maybe this is a brand new Turian, that looks pretty different than what we currently know. Or maybe it is another bird-like race. It would be kind of disappointing though if the Ralloi did end up looking so similar to Turians. I would also expect for any new alien races to also have companions of that race, like Javik, Thane, and Jal, since you usually explore their civilizations and world through storylines and quests. And I'd also expect any new alien races to be romanceable as well, including the Ralloi. As for the rest of the image, I hope this Asari to the left is Shaira, and I doubt this human male is anyone of importance, since it looks like he's just serving the drinks to the Asari. I do wonder if these two Krogan are from the poster or trailer. I did try and find an exact armor match but couldn't find any, but the pauldrons are different than Grunt and Rex's armor. So maybe it's just some random Krogan hanging out at the bar. And if this is a Volus, this is the beefiest Volus we've ever seen. But I still doubt we'd get one as a companion, maybe a shipmate or a vendor, but not an actual companion. And the Hanar on the right looks like someone who frequents the club here with their tentacle bangles. And I doubt this is a companion, but a Hanar contact or friend would be fun, especially if Javik now has a connection to the Hanar. And of course, last but not least, we have the Asari sitting in between the Angara and Geth. And Gamble did like a tweet implying that this was Liara and her Geth bodyguard. So I assume this is Liara, and it looks like she has a North Face vest on to me. But this also reminds me of Arya and how Arya would be in a place like this. And the rest of the individuals in the image are mostly background noise, except maybe the humans. And most of these humans look like they're wearing some kind of maybe lab coat. And the one approaching the Asari in the middle looks kind of suspicious. Other than that, I don't really see any recognizable characters. But I do think this piece will have relevant characters for us to look back on and be able to spot characters we actually meet in the game. And I think this image is intentionally obscure to hide those tiny details. There is one more image we've been shown that has characters in it, and it's this concept art Gamble posted for N7 Day 2022. And maybe these are Turian, Salarian, and Krogan squad mates, but I think this is more so just showing us that we're seeing characters in breathing apparatuses and was intended to give more of a world view than companion view. So that's everything we have now and any major characters that could be being hinted at. I also want to mention some of the cut concepts from Mass Effect 2, simply because I think a lot of them could be revisited. When they were making the Dirty Dozen, they had early concepts, and a lot of them morphed into what we actually get in-game. The Cerberus Superwoman became Miranda, the Cerberus Bodyguard became Jacob, etc. But some didn't make it into the game. The Salarian Assassin, based on Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride, that was seeking to avenge his ancestors, who were members of the League of One. His story would have revolved around a quest for vengeance. There was also a Salarian concept of a techno-hippie, who is basically a skilled hacker Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. There was also a Batarian gearhead that never made it into the game. The player would have hunted a Batarian terrorist who actually just turned out to be a 27-year-old socially awkward nerd. He would have had amazing tech skills and would have wanted a quiet, peaceful life. He also didn't hate humanity. And I stand by the fact that we do eventually need a Batarian squad mate. There was also a concept called the Tank, a 75-year-old non-sentient robot that Shepard could obtain through a salvaging mechanic. With credit, this robot could be improved and would impact travel around the Citadel. They were going to explore themes of slavery with Shepard owning this AI. So glad they didn't go this route, but the concept of the Tank was eventually tied into Legion. The early Legion concepts were very interesting. The Geth Frankenstein, which originally had 3 personalities. This would have included memory cores and collecting parts for Legion, allowing the player to essentially build Legion. Another concept that eventually became part of Legion is the Lost Hologram. Originally, the character would have been a piece of damaged Prothean hologram tech. The story revolved around the Lost Hologram, revealing a civil rights movement in the Prothean Empire. This character would be wishing to be treated equally, which would have been used as some sort of comedic relief, and I'm also glad that they didn't really go that way either. I really do hope they introduce some new themes and tropes with their companions though. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the Andromeda companions. They weren't bad, they just didn't connect with me. Except for Jal, because he mostly introduces new concepts, and in a romance he's especially open and emotional, which I really liked. And Vetra and Drax are close seconds. But Drax felt very similar to Rex, and I think that's part of why he's so popular. So I hope they can create new characters without repeating past stories/personalities. Personally, I'd love to see some kind of enemies to lovers, or maybe a companion who can betray you, since again, that doesn't really happen in the Mass Effect series like it does in the Dragon Age games. They've already done the "we have a kid we have to protect" with Grunt, a wise old man trope with Rex, etc. So I would love to see brand new concepts in the next game. I would really love to meet the virtual aliens, maybe some of the ones who swap consciousness with individuals that were already living on the Citadel. They did this to leave their virtual world, and being able to hear about how and why they did this would be really interesting. I also want to learn about what their life was like in the virtual world, what their bodies look like before they went to the virtual world. There's just so many unanswered questions there, and I think that would be a really interesting way to tie back into lore from the original trilogy. And I desperately want a Ralloy companion. They have already been set up perfectly to be introduced to the new game, and I think pulling from foundations already built within the lore is a perfect way to make the world feel more real. So I hope we get a Ralloy companion, and get to hear about their time during the Reaper invasion and how they retreated to their planet with the intent to trick the Reapers. If we see the Ralloy, it means that this worked, and that's an interesting story. And this one is a bit far-fetched, but I have a running Jardan theory I'm working on, and I think it would be really interesting if we find out the Jardan were already in the Milky Way and can be a connection to Andromeda. And we meet them and find out about their history, maybe even in a prequel setting. We could find out who they were warring with, and maybe even find out what the Jeln were, since they, it, or where seems to be connected to the Scourge detonation. And I'll make a longer video on this, but I do think the Jardan could be in the Milky Way galaxy. And I know I'm a broken record about this, but I'd really like to see a Batarian squad mate. The scrap Mass Effect 2 concept could be taken and made better, or we meet a Batarian after everything that happened with Shepard and find out the aftermath of the Batarian worlds being destroyed, and them fleeing their government. I also want to see the Listheni. We've seen 2 Omega signs, and the known Listheni in the lore say they were living on Omega. So if Omega has expanded and we're seeing Omega at this scale, in what looks like Ilium, I would expect to see the Listheni, especially if this is one pictured here. Maybe from them we learn about what happened to Omega after Mass Effect 3, and how Omega expanded. Maybe what even happened with Aria, etc. And my top want for a companion for Mass Effect 5 is a Geth. Legion is my favorite companion next to Liara, and he was so underutilized, especially with all of his cut content. And I think after the ending of Mass Effect 3, a Geth companion is kind of a must if they're returning. Not only would we get to see their introduction into the Council races firsthand, but we'd also be able to see how their civilization grows and finds peace with the Quarians, depending on the decision you made in Mass Effect 3, hopefully. And I'd also really like to see maskless Quarians. We've already now seen Tali's maskless cannon face, and I'd like for this to be explored more, especially after the events of Rannoch and the Quarian and Geth War. I'd also love to see Hanar, Elcor, Volus maybe not become active squad mates due to combat limitations, but I think it would be awesome if they were maybe shipmates or races we form more connections with than we did in the original trilogy. And lastly, I feel like we are getting an Angara companion. And like I mentioned earlier, I hope their design is kind of updated so they don't look as odd, but I think it could be really interesting to find out that the Jardan planted Angara in more than just the Andromeda Galaxy. Or maybe it's a Jardan and an Angara body that they built, which we know was how the Angara were created from Andromeda. And the concept of the Jardan using empty body templates to transfer their consciousness to was their reason for creating new races. And I wonder if the Jardan could have been under the Prothean umbrella if they are in the Milky Way, And essentially, I have 1,000,001 questions about the Jardin, and with some of the recent clues, including Angara and music from the scene where you find out that the Jardin created the Angara, I have a feeling that they could be connected. And I hope this next game introduces at least 2 new races and has a larger companion roster than Mass Effect 1, because I think a Solarian and Krogan companion are at the very least confirmed with the new concept art alongside Liara, with Geth and Angara as a close second. But I think we all want a Turian, Quarian, and of course a human companion as well. Basically, I want it all. Though I don't particularly care about a human companion, I'll be totally honest. I will say that I do hope this game focuses more on alien companions instead of humans though. We really had a lot of human companions, and I'm sure it's probably because they're easier to create development-wise, but I hope the next game focuses more on alien races, worlds, and stories. And something that I think is important to point out is that during Andromeda's development, crazier designs were abandoned to make more cosplay-friendly designs, which I think is a major mistake. Dorian Keegan, a franchise director, said in an interview that one of the strengths of the original Mass Effect trilogy is that you can actually cosplay most of the alien characters. The intention in Mass Effect Andromeda was to introduce new races that would be in the realm of cosplay, which is probably why more crazy concepts were abandoned. And I understand the importance of cosplay, and I think it's awesome they take that into consideration for the cosplay community. But I think it's an overall detriment to the universe of Mass Effect to not include alien species that aren't very alien because they want people to be able to cosplay them. Majority of the alien species in Mass Effect are relatively similar to humans, with similar human body shapes and movements, and I really do hope they lean into the very many out there possibilities of true alien designs. The same interview also says that they only had the budget for 2 new aliens, and I hope the next game gets far more than that. New aliens have been missing from the game for a while, and I really hope they fully embrace the alien side and weird possibilities. And when it comes to romance, I think every companion should be romanceable except Liara, and I think a lot of the romances need to be a lot more open as far as the choice. That's one thing Mass Effect was always behind on, especially in comparison to Dragon Age. I firmly believe that the cast should be mostly aliens and mostly romanceable by all genders. Not every character should be bi/pan, but most should be in an ideal world, especially depending on the roster size. In my opinion anyways. I still want the characters to have individual sexualities and preferences, but I still think that most should be romanceable. As far as Liara, I do not think she should be romanceable. I romance Liara in every single playthrough. I am a ride or die. And I think her relationship that she had with Shepard should be the only romance that we know of. Personally, I don't care if that's toxic or immature. I don't want Liara to ever love anyone but Shepard. Sue me. If Shepard isn't around, I want Liara to have moved on with her life, sure, but I want Shepard to have been the one, forever. Like I said, sue me. I don't care if that's problematic. I think that Liara is going to be like Liliana from Dragon Age Inquisition anyways, where she will have romanced someone in the past, and she's more there to be a guide, not necessarily a direct companion. And I wouldn't be able to resist if she was romanceable again, so that would just be weird. I did make a visual of the companions that have been hinted at though, and I'd like to give a gentle reminder that this is just fun speculation. There aren't any confirmed clues or confirmations of the next game, except really that Liara is returning. We literally don't know anything else, so keep speculating while we still can. I expect that after Dragon Age Dreadwolf releases and finishes its marketing cycle, we'll finally get more focus on Mass Effect 5. But it makes sense that they haven't done any major reveals or confirmed anything as to distract from Dreadwolf's upcoming release. In my opinion anyways. Yes, it's frustrating that we don't know anything, but I expect that to change during maybe this year's N7 Day depending on Dreadwolf's release date, especially since Dreadwolf's release means that the team and probably some devs from Dreadwolf will move over to focus on Mass Effect 5's development, which was still in pre-production as of August 2023. And this game is obviously still in very early development. And when the trailer came out and those 3 characters alongside Liara were shown, the game had barely been in development for over a year. So all of this may change, all of this may mean nothing, but hopefully we learn more soon. And here is a visual of the companions that have been hinted at. Let me know which companions you'd like to see in the next game, if there's any tropes or concept you'd like their stories to follow, and which companions and races you'd be interested in romancing. I'd also like to make a quick announcement that I'll be chatting with Mark Meir next month. Commander Shepard himself will be joining Mr. Holthen and I, and we'll be asking him some questions about Mass Effect. And if you're an N7 agent, you can send me your questions/comments, and I'll see if we can ask Mark them. Channel members will also have access to the interview first, and I'll provide more details once we finalize the date and time. And a special thank you to my channel members. Thank you for your support, and see you next time.